Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
And we are live. So welcome to A Coffee with Karen, a cup of positivity with just a sprinkling of woo-woo. Now, I know recently we've been having more than, I would say, a sprinkling. We've been having a few tablespoons, I think. So we are going to maybe bring it back down a little bit and get more on the mental and the physical side today. So in general, most of my guests tend to be coaches, healers, and they tend to be helping people on a mental, a physical or spiritual perspective, or any combination of those three. And so I'm your host, Karen Roberts. I do come from a very, I would say, physical background from the fitness industry and sports therapy, so healing from that side of things. I now tend to focus actually on helping other coaches and healers build their business, really get them clients. So I find it really interesting to hearing everybody's stories as to how they ended up doing what they're doing. I find that always quite fascinating, and what they are doing to help others. So my guest today, I mean, the name is phenomenal, right? Moon Sade. If you could explain to the listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do, and share a bit of your story.
Thank you, Karen, for having me on your show today. Moon Sade, actually.
Oh, so sorry. I've automatically gone for the for the singer. When you hear that,
Moon Sade.
My apologies.
I wish I was. I grew up with her, and she's just so influential and amazing, isn't she?
As you are.
Thank you. I am very much like you, a coach. I am a parenting health and wellness coach, and I help parents of high-functioning autistic children. That is my specialism, and that's what I do. I guess it's kind of a no-brainer as to how I got here. I have two children who are high-functioning autistic. And I was a secondary school teacher, so I spent about 18 years teaching in secondary schools, both top set and bottom set, and wide range of abilities. Quite a few of my students were special needs. They weren't always autistic, but they did have very different needs, and a few of them were on the spectrum. But it's more my experience with my own children that have led me to where I am.
Which tends to be quite common. I mean, it does tend to be, I suppose, it's a natural response. If we've overcome certain challenges and we know what it felt like before we had found the solutions, it's quite often a natural response to want to go and help others so that they don't have to go through what you went through. Is that how it sort of came about?
Very much so, yes. And for me specifically, because of high functioning autism, it's different to moderate and low functioning autism or severe autism. When on the spectrum, when you're high functioning autism, you present in very different ways, but most common is the perception that you present as normal or neurotypical, in that high functioning autism is very much a hidden disability, and what you do and how you cope with it is very much something that happens kind of under the radar. It happens behind closed doors, so very few people actually know what it is or how you cope with it or what happens. And for me personally, and for a lot of parents of high functioning autistic children, the challenges that you deal with, the difficulties, the problems, the concerns, they tend to become something that you deal with on your own. Because when you say to someone, I have this concern, a lot of the time it's dismissed because your child doesn't look autistic. They don't seem autistic. They don't present as autistic. They just kind of, they're disruptive, or, you know, they're just very, very active. They might have ADHD, but they don't.
Right.
Or you spoil your child, or, you know, they don't have discipline. Or then there's the other aspect of it where they have a diagnosis and you have concerns, but then when you look at it, your child's concerns compared to parents who have children with severe autism, who have no mobility or are non-verbal, and then you think, my concerns are really not that bad as someone else's.
So what I'm hearing there are two different aspects to that. It sounds like, from what you're sharing there, is and I can imagine maybe children that are high functioning could maybe get bullied more. Would that be right? Because they would be treated as quote unquote normal. I mean, I hate that word. Whereas, and then what it sounds like, then you suffer more because you want to do it yourself, because you feel like people are going to perceive it as, oh, you're overdoing it, or, you know, it's not as bad as this. People will compare. Is that what's going on?
Definitely, very much so. And then you end up feeling really, really isolated, and you feel very lonely, and you struggle a lot because the challenges are no less challenging. They're just very different.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I suppose when there's something that is obviously apparent due to how they look or how they walk or whatever, I suppose, you know, maybe there's more things that are set up for it. Would that be right? Whereas a case, and then the teachers, I bet there's a bit of a challenge. They might just think that they're just being naughty, as opposed to, right, okay, I can see that. So with your children, how early were you even aware?
We were aware with both our children from a very young age. My oldest, probably not that he was autistic right from the beginning. He's in his 20s now, so we're talking quite a long time ago. But we did know that there were developmental anomalies that needed to be addressed. But he doesn't have the typical kind of indicators and markers of autistic children. So, you know, when they talk about markers, they talk about autistic children that stim, which is where they self-stimulate. So they always talk about children who flap their hands, or who spin, or who rock back and forth. And my son doesn't do any of those things. So when I talked about issues with him, his teachers were just, doesn't have any indicators of special needs, because he was really, really, and he is really bright. And most high-functioning autistic children are extremely intelligent. They're articulate, and they do what we call masking, which is exactly what it sounds like. They kind of don a mask where they fit in with everything. They learn to mimic, and they learn to copy what is going on around them, so that they fit in. And unless you're watching carefully, or you don't actually notice that they are following, and they're copying, and they're reacting to things in the way that they see those around them doing. And that was what was happening with mine. So he didn't have those kind of markers and indicators, and the teachers would just say, he's very bright, he just needs a bit more focus, and he just needs to be more disciplined. And he doesn't have special needs, he's just disruptive, and he needs to learn to sit in his seat through the lesson. And you're thinking, but these are indicators. Something needs to be done.
Yes.
And it didn't. He was only first assessed when he was 13.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so already hit, see, what do you call it now? Senior school. I'm still going back then, but so that must have been a challenge for him. So he hasn't been assessed. He's gone up to,
Secondary
school. I'm trying to think of the word there. And so did he have more challenges from there as opposed to primary school?
No, it was easier when we got to secondary school, probably because I had been a secondary school teacher all along. So there was a little bit more respect for my experience and where I was coming from. When I said
they were listening, to you.
Yeah. And also because in secondary school, it's more important because they've got to worry about their results, GCSEs, A levels, league tables, statistics, how many students are reaching A's and B's and C's. So it matters. And, when you're saying that there's this really bright student that's not going to reach those markers unless something is done, it matters because that affects the tables, the statistics, and your standing in the, ratings of schools and things like that. So eventually there was an educational psychologist brought in and the whole process started. And by the time he was officially diagnosed, he was 16.
Wow. I can understand it must be difficult for some, with schools, if there's a lack of funding, because maybe if there's only one in a school or there's different challenges amongst the school with the children, it seems to be, there's quite a lot of children, it sounds like, that are having different, whether it's autism, whether it's something else, or different mental health issues. What do you think can be done? What do you think they can do in schools to help a broader sort of range of children?
I think the most important thing is listen to the parents. That's very important because they know what goes on with their children behind closed doors. With mine, I knew what happened. We knew what was going on with him when he came home from school. We knew how he was coping with the stresses. We knew how he was dealing with the difficulties and the challenges. What they saw in school wasn't what we saw at home. So that's one of the very important things. Don't just dismiss a parent's concern, because they're the ones.
Do you know what the different sort of I don't want to use the word symptoms, but what would you say were the differences in how they're reacting to certain stressors?
Well, the thing about it is everyone reacts very uniquely because the combination that makes up being on the spectrum is extremely individualized to every single person. For mine, for him to deal with the stresses, it would take him about an hour to 2 hours after school of just complete downtime before we got him certain things. We got him a cat and certain toys that would allow him to kind of just lose himself in the day's stresses. And he was bullied quite a lot in school. So there was that, we had to give him that time when he came home from school. So there wasn't homework, there wasn't chores, there wasn't asking him to do anything. It was just, he came home, he changed out of his uniform, and that was it for the next hour, 2 hours. He was left to just decompress, find himself, go through his processes of getting rid of all of his stresses, and then only would he be able to kind of face the homework and all of the other things that needed to go. Right. Before that, it was nightmares and sleepwalking, and he would just have really, really lots of stress, wouldn't eat, wouldn't be able to concentrate. So, you know, it
Right.
presents differently. Some children just, they harm themselves. Some children just become very introverted. They become very withdrawn. It all depends on the child and how they're coping and what's going on inside of them.
Right.
But a lot of the time you don't see that, because once they step out the door to face the world, the mask goes on.
Right. Okay. And what was the difference then with your younger one?
My younger one, because my eldest had already been diagnosed, there is an awareness that there's a genetic predisposition that additional children very likely will carry the autistic, I wouldn't say gene, but they are more likely to be autistic. And he started showing signs and symptoms of it, or traits, characteristics of it, when he was quite young. And the GP was very, very lovely, absolutely understanding of all my concerns when I went to raise them with her. By the time he was 3, we had already kind of got the referral in place, and he was assessed, diagnosed, and had everything in place by the time he was 5.
Right. Right, there you go. So it is, I suppose it is, I mean, have you found with, obviously, subsequently you've gone on to be a coach, so you are helping other parents, but does this seem to be quite a new thing because they weren't diagnosing it early on?
I think it's a mix of both. I think that there were a lot that were missed, yes, overlooked. And I also think that because it is something that is more in the news and is more focused on, there are a lot more parents that are seeing things in their children and wondering, is that autism? Isn't it autism? So a lot more children are being put forward for assessment.
Right.
But that also comes down to perhaps a lack of proper understanding of whether their child is.
Yeah, so it's awareness. It sounds like it's awareness. Because again, we have these, you know, we have these preconceived ideas of what an autistic child is gonna look like. We have all these stories that have been created that this is going to look like this. So people, I suppose, are less likely, because they're going to be ignorant, right? They're going to be ignorant to this kind of, you know, and that's not in a bad way. It's, we're all ignorant. I'm ignorant about like an awful lot of things. But it sounds like that maybe because of there is definitely more awareness overall with all, you know, with all sorts of things, from mental health to any child with special needs, and you know, trying to more include them in general schools rather than keeping them in specific schools for them, which yes, I think that's a majorly important thing, because the other children need to have compassion and be able to talk and work with children with special needs too. And I do think that maybe in the past, because they did tend to go to just special needs schools, that the children weren't coming across them. So there probably was more, was going to be more bullying, because they didn't have the understanding, or they weren't being taught by teachers and by their parents. So with like now, with what you do now, helping other parents deal with it, how do people come to you? Is it after they've been tested, or is it where they're a little bit suspicious and they want to know what the process is as to go about getting them tested?
It's a little bit tricky at the moment, because a lot of the time when you get a diagnosis, or when parents get a diagnosis, the instinct is, I know what to do because there's so much information out there, so I'll just go ahead and do it. Google. And I'll find what I need to do. Yes, Google. Google is king. But Google isn't king in this instance.
It's not the answer. I can bet, even though I haven't looked it, but I'm just going to go on a guess that if you were to Google it, you'd get 1,000 ideas one way and another 1,000 in the completely opposite way. Would I be sort of on track there?
You would be absolutely on track. And that's what a lot of parents do. That's what I did, to be fair and honest. That's what I did initially, was kind of, found out this was it. And when you get the results and you get the reports and you get all this, it's not a lot of information that you're given from, the clinicians and the organizations and all of that. So you kind of left with, okay, so I've got this diagnosis and I've got this, and high functioning autism is not a clinical diagnosis anymore. You get a blanket diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. And sometimes you get a breakdown of level 1, level 2, level 3, and that is an indication of mild or moderate or severe autism. And that's about it. And then you go and you find out the information for yourself. And I did that. And I felt like Alice going down the rabbit hole.
Oh.
You just get lost in all this information. And, and then I kept on looking at the information, and I kept on looking at my child, and I kept on going, they say that this should be happening, but it's not. Does this make it better? Does it make it worse? Should he? And it just kept on driving me crazy. And eventually I just kind of went, okay, that's it. I'm stopping. And I'm just going to focus on my child. And a lot of parents do that. When you get that information, you kind of go, okay, find out. Google, books, online chats, everything. And you do get help. I'll be honest, you get help from online chats. Lots of parents that have lots of different experiences. But the thing that I found is that no matter how similar someone's experience is to yours, it's never the same.
It's never going to be. Why would it be? Why would it be? Just because they're on the spectrum? Out of all the children with multiple different types of personalities and they have different lives, why would a child with special needs be exactly the same as each other? I mean, it's crazy for them to even think that would be the case. They're all going to be, each one is going to be completely different. I would have guessed, because we're human, right? After all. Takes all sorts.
It does take all sorts.
So it must have felt very challenging in the beginning when you first. So going back to your eldest child, how old did you say he's 18?
He's in his 20s now.
He's in his 20s. So he's an adult now, and he was 12. Was that right when he was actually assessed? And 16 when he was finally. Yeah. Okay. So how did you feel? I mean, your child is nearly an adult. He's had to go through all the challenges he went throughout both schools. And then you got that final assessment when he was 16. You've gone down the rabbit hole. How was that on you? How did you feel?
It's exhausting. It's draining. It's confusing. It's frightening. It's a lot of things. I think I was better equipped than a lot of parents, though, because I was teaching. And as a teacher, I work with a lot of children with different needs. And I worked very closely with the special education coordinator in school. So I had more knowledge and more understanding of what we were dealing with even before he had the diagnosis and the assessment. So, we were already able to put things in place for him well before he had the assessment. Right. But even so, when you do get that final kind of assessment, you have a lot of mixed feelings. You feel relieved because now I know.
Yeah.
But then you also kind of, okay, so what does this mean? And what don't I know? And how is this going to impact on my child? What does it mean for my child? What does it do to their chances for the future? And a lot of parents kind of then go, but I don't want the world to know about it, because that's going to affect my child, and that's going to affect his or her education and their job opportunities and their prospective careers. And that's another reason that a lot of parents don't ask for help in what they need.
Okay. Because they think it's going to have a negative impact.
Yeah.
Oh yes, it's I can sort of see both sides, I can see sort of both sides. As a worried parent, it's not that they've done, they want the best for their child. Very difficult. But there's so I presume there is a lot of help. It doesn't have to be that bad. Is that there is a lot of help out there? If they decide, if they actually admit and go for it.
That's the thing, though. I mean, statistically, only 22% of autistic children or adults are in full-time employment. And when parents start looking at statistics, that makes them really, really worried. But that's where I come in, see, because the way that I approach everything is that every single child is unique. And for me, my experience with high functioning autistics, both my own children and those that I worked with when I was teaching, is they are absolutely amazingly intelligent, and they can do so many things. It may not necessarily be in the way that you want them to do it, but if you can just find the way to how they process, and that's the important thing. You need to find the key to how they process things, how they understand things, how they work things out in their brains. And once you can figure that out, what they can do and how they do it and how they process things and how they understand things and what they can do is just amazing. And there's nothing that can hold them back as long as you are there to help them, support them. And if you can meet their needs as a parent, then you can help them to get to wherever they want to be in whatever way that is necessary for them. And
so it sounds like they're going to be like, for instance, is it ADHD that quite often, dyslexia, quite often we now know that put them in managerial positions because they see big picture, and other people would be better at doing the individual things. So just because they're dyslexic and can't, not very good at the finer detail, they're going to be more visionary. Which obviously is quite a blanket. I always quite find that fascinating in itself, that's quite but it does tend to be the norm, that's quite a general thing. So does there tend to be a general or a specific type of work that would be better for people that are on the spectrum, or even is that completely individual?
That is completely individual as well. Again, that comes down to stereotypes. People think, when they think autistic people, they often think of Rain Man and, Dustin Hoffman, and really, really good with maths and figures. And then you think of Ben Affleck, if you've watched The Accountant, the movie, where he's absolutely brilliant with figures and things like that. And there are high functioning autistics that are absolutely brilliant with figures, but then there are those that are amazing artists.
Right. So there isn't a blanket thing.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And, the creative people, and there are those that are inventors, and there's those that love writing. So it's not.
So it sounds like they actually end up excelling at whatever it is that they are passionate about, or or good at.
Yes.
So it's finding which I suppose is what we need to do with every child. And I suppose the whole problem with the current state of the school system is that it tends to focus on one type.
Yes.
and not the
It's
others.
standardized.
Certain things are considered as not as important
Yes.
as other subjects, and I do find that a huge shame. I've got two very different daughters. One is more the creative, one is more the mathematical, and they're equally brilliant. It's just one, school favors one and not so much the other, and that does seem a shame. So actually, if that's for the quote unquote normal children, then anybody that isn't in that little box that they put people in is going to be left out even more so.
Very much so. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do what do parents do? What's the answer then?
I always say parent the child in front of you. Not the one you wish you had, not the one everybody says you should have, but the one that is right in front of you, not the one that Google says you should have.
Yeah, there you go. Google has its place, and especially when it comes to things like this, absolutely not. And that, so, there you go. It's another thing that we tend to, and again, generalizing, worry so much about what other people think. Yeah. And you've got to take a step back and just focus on the needs of the child that's in front of you right now, and go with that. So, do you see there is a real issue with this sort of all across the country in schools, or do you think things are getting better?
I think that there is an effort to make it better. But I think it's a lot more complicated than just what generally happens in schools. And I say this from my perspective of having been a teacher, which is it comes down as a directive that we're going to do this in schools. But the actual practical reality of how it works in schools tends to be a lot more difficult to put in place. And also teachers are very individual people. So some teachers will take what needs to be done and do it in a way that is done with compassion and caring. And other teachers will do it as this is a directive, we have to do it in that sort of dismissive way where it's got to be done. So the compassion and the caring is not as ingrained in what they're doing as it should be. And that is just a case of potluck.
Right. Yeah. What can you do to change that? I suppose it's, and again, we don't know what we don't know. So I suppose if you've not had any experience, which is why people like yourself are totally, you're needed, aren't you? Because you've been through it, you understand, you've gone through all the emotions of everything, and then you're in the perfect position to help, guide, support. Whereas a teacher that's just getting on, and has never come across any of this, it's going to be even more of it. It's going to be, for some, it's going to be more of a challenge. And there are, I suppose, you teachers, this as you were one yourself. They're just under so much pressure.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So much to do, so much to. So all the bureaucracy
so many
of it,
boxes to tick. Yes, so many boxes to tick. Yes,
which is a shame, because the whole point of you being teachers is that you can go and teach, and you're sort of almost being taken away from that to do all the other unimportant stuff that's just for stats.
Very
which does seem a shame. Do you miss teaching, or do you feel that you're just totally on purpose now, helping and supporting other parents?
I feel that I'm doing what I should be doing. I feel that when I was teaching, I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, and I'm happy that I did what I did. But I wouldn't want to go back now. Now I think this is my purpose. I feel this is my purpose. I know how much we struggled. I know how difficult it was. And I wouldn't want any parent listening to me to think that I have all the answers, and my challenges and my struggles with raising high functioning autistic children is over. I don't think it ever will be. As a parent of high functioning autistic children, I'm still every day learning something new about my children. I still have challenges that I have to deal with. And it's not something that, you kind of have all the answers and that's it. It's done, dusted. I know exactly what's going on with my child, and no day after today is going to be a challenge. It's not that.
No.
It's never that. Yes, you get to know them better every day and you get to manage challenges better every day. But there are days where it still knocks you out of the blue and you still have to figure it out, and you still have to overcome new challenges, because they will have new challenges that will come along that you haven't come across before, and you still have to learn it. But the better you know your child and the better you know how they react to certain things, the better able you are to help them with new challenges. So, it's a lifelong thing that you're going to have to do.
Yeah, I'm sure. And your eldest, 22, what is he doing? What has he chosen to do out?
He's at uni at the moment, so
fantastic.
We'll see what he does when he finishes.
Does he have an idea? Does he know what he wants to do?
He's not 100% certain right now. He's interested in a couple of things. He's interested in engineering, but he's also interested in kind of abstracts. So they don't quite go together. We'll see.
Okay. So he's still got to figure it out. But and how is he? Have you noticed a big change? So he was at secondary school 16 when he was finally got the assessment back. Now he's in uni because of obviously you were dealing with stuff before then, but do you think a lot of things have changed, and has he changed being in that environment as opposed to when he was at school and he hadn't been assessed?
Some things have changed. The support that is put in place for him is a lot easier. So in that respect, yes, we don't have to fight as much to get him the kind of the support he needs, the extra time for exams and things like that. There are challenges for him because being diagnosed at that age, he went through most of his developmental stages in life being neurotypical, and now suddenly he's got to kind of absorb this idea that he's not neurotypical and it's okay to be neurodivergent and be what he is. And there is a challenge in him between what is learned behaviors and what is natural behaviors, which comes up sometimes. So there are still challenges that happen about what he should do and what he wants to do and what is right for him and what is still learned behaviors for him. So there are still those things that come up.
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, I'm sure that happens with a lot of children, and well, a lot of adults. We all quite often do things because we think we should.
Yes.
And that's the way, and that's what we're taught. Like very possibly with, I mean, I'm sure being a teacher has helped you with this, so that's possibly why you're doing it. But I'm sure it's a standard career, isn't it? I'm sure it's thought of to do certain jobs and maybe not follow your actual passion,
Yes.
and it is going with your gut. So going with what you want to do rather than what you think you should do. I think that's possibly for everybody out there, but more intense with children that are going to be like that, because the whole thing, it sounds, is a lot more intense. Is it? How has it affected your family as a whole?
Not as much as I think it affects some other families, probably because from the time he was young, we always knew that there were developmental issues, and from the time he was in primary school, every single year I think they just got fed up of me because I kept on saying he needed to be assessed every single year, every single teacher, every single parents' evening. So we always
good
knew.
for you. But good for you. I mean, it's a shame that you have to fight. It's almost like a battle, isn't it? You've got to just keep going. But thank goodness you did, because I'm sure he would be having more challenges now if he hadn't, right?
Yeah.
And how's your younger son doing?
It's very different for him, I think, because he was diagnosed so early. He just accepts it as part of who he is. So there's no major challenges about it. It's just learning about what it is to be autistic. So he's got questions about what it means and what, how does it work, and how does his brain work differently to other people's.
Right. And I mean, I suppose that is it. It's can we come away from this belief system that there's something wrong?
Yeah.
All children, they're all perfect, just different. The way, like, I don't know, an introvert versus an extrovert, how they deal with things, how they process things, all this. We're in one way we're sort of taught separateness, and then in another way, contradicting way, we're all supposed to be the same, and we're not.
Yes.
So I suppose it's not just the child understanding themselves and how they process versus that person, but also everybody else around, the other children, having teaching them again compassion, rather than because you're different to me. They get bullied, to have that understanding that we are all different, and people that are more like this need processing this way, and they need this to help them. This person, and I think that's going to go into the workplace as well. And like you say, it is going to be a good manager that's going to realize that, okay, somebody like this is going to be perfect for that role. And then somebody who's a bit more like this is going to be perfect for that role. And they're both as important as each other. There's no better than the other, no worse than the other. And build a team of people that can do the job as best as they can. So for you, with regards to, so if any parents out there who are going through it, and especially if they are going through that fear of do they do a test because they're worried about what's going to happen further down the road, and whether it's going to be beneficial, or they don't want to make things worse for their child, maybe it's just a good idea just to reach out and have a conversation, right?
Anytime. Yes.
So for just the listeners, obviously, depending on where you're watching this or listening to this, if it's on the website or YouTube or the blog, Moon's details are actually underneath, so you can just click on the link. But to just the listeners on Mintwave Radio or on the podcast, how would parents get in touch with you? Where would they find you?
The best place to find me is on LinkedIn. It's the easiest way to find me. Just look up Moonsade, and my details are there, and you can just message me.
Fantastic. And what's your process? How do you work with people with children that may benefit from being assessed?
At the moment, I work with parents on a one-to-one basis, so it's the best way for me and for them, because each child is individual. And when I work on a one-to-one basis, it is that parent, that child, and specifically what is happening with that child, and the needs and the strategies that family needs in order to be able to parent the child's needs, but also the parents' needs, because it's very difficult to suddenly start parenting a high-functioning autistic child. As a parent, we grow up being taught a certain way of parenting, and we watch our parents, and then we watch the television programs, and then we read all the books that say you should do this and you should do that and you should do that. And even when you're expecting your first child, you get all these books that say you should do this and you should do this and you should do that. And when your child is born, they're not born with a sign that says, I'm going to be autistic.
Yeah.
So you do all the normal parent things, and then you get this diagnosis that says your child is high functioning autistic or autistic. And suddenly all these things that you've learned about parenting just don't work. And you end up thinking, I am such a horrible parent. I'm a failure. I don't know what I'm doing. But it isn't that. It's just that you have to learn a different way of applying your parenting skills. And that's what I do as well. It's not just parenting the child's needs, but it's also helping the parents to see that what they know can still be applied, just in a different way.
So for anybody out there who, you know, might have some suspicions, what would you say are typical, if there are there any typical sort of signs to look out for?
There are some indicators that I suppose would be typical. But again, there are so many that are unique. I think the best thing to do is speak to your GP about your concerns, anything that you feel is setting off those alarm bells in your head because you know your child better than anybody else. Speak to your GP, speak to, if there is somebody in your child's school that you trust, a special education coordinator, speak to them and stick with it. If you feel that your child needs to be assessed, stick with it. Don't let somebody else tell you there's nothing wrong with your child. You know, argue about it, fight for it, and make sure that you get your child assessed, because
it's going to benefit them. It's all about your own children. Okay, so for them to come to you, so you start with do you offer just a conversation? Do you do it on Zoom? Do you do it in person? How do you work?
I do Zoom. Not everybody that I speak to is in the UK, and I'm based in London. Most of the people that I speak to are not. So online Zoom is where I'm at, and I offer a free 30-minute conversation just to see what's going on with you. So you can meet me, I can meet you, and we can figure out what's happening. And then from there, we see what works best for you. But as I said, it's all one-to-one at the moment, because that is what is best.
Yeah, I would have thought it's a very difficult thing to do in a group setting because of the wide sort of range of challenges, you know, because like you say, I mean, different because your younger son was assessed earlier, but even with that, what were the sort of main differences between them?
They are completely different.
Like any child. Surprise, really.
They have, I mean, they have some similarities, but they are completely
Any similar
different.
Challenges, you know, just the specific challenges that they have?
They are both quite set in their ways. They both have certain routines that they like to keep. They both like certain things of theirs to be kept separate. One likes his things to be put in a certain way, and the other likes his things to be put in a completely different way.
But it's the fact that it needs to be ordered and it has to be right. Okay.
Yeah. But the way that they order it and where they put them and how they put them is completely different.
Right.
One is quite creative and the other is quite structured. So they're very different.
Yeah.
Their tastes in food are different. They're high functioning autistic, but they're just so completely different. And that is, again, where I say that every child is unique, because I know they are just so different.
Yeah. So what do you foresee now moving forward? Challenges for in the workplace?
For my children, or just for
Well,
autistic?
or any autistic children on the spectrum, really. Do you think that things are changing? Is there more awareness?
I
What else do you think needs to be done to create more awareness, and for them to realise that it's going to be a benefit and not a problem?
There are lots of challenges ahead. I think there is a growing awareness. My concern is that the awareness, like a lot of awareness these days, is a token awareness in some instances. So yes, we're aware that there are autistic people, and we need to fill the quota of autistic people in our company, so we'll do that. But there are some employers that actually genuinely do make the effort to have an environment that is suitable for autistic people, because they recognize the value that
Right.
autistic people can bring to their business,
To their company.
environment.
Yeah, there's
So
going to be, but it does sound like, if people were a little bit more aware of differences in general, with with all of us, that the fact that not everybody operates in the same way, not everybody is going to react in the same way to certain stimuli within the company, and that if they are aware, they're not going to put everyone in the same box and
yes,
tick that one off, and it's going to be a win-win.
yeah.
Rather than the resistance or causing. I mean, do you notice within your own children that if they do go then outside of that environment, that safe environment of the school, now being aware, do they deal with anxiety issues when they take them into a totally different arena?
Yes, very much so. There's a lot of anxiety with different places, different people, different sounds, different smells. There's also the anxiety that comes with how people react to them. And that again comes down to the fact that the general bias is that they don't look autistic. My younger one gets that a lot because he's young, and people tend to kind of see anything that he does out of well behaved as bad behavior or undisciplined.
Yes.
And it is just, if ever I've said anything, or when I say something, it's always, oh, he doesn't look autistic. Are you sure he's autistic? Yeah. You just kind of, okay. So we've taken to just learning to ignore what people don't understand. But there is that anxiety that comes with it. So it's not just anxiety for the children, but it's anxiety for the parents as well.
Yeah, well, that's what I was just going to ask then. What about you, and how, what do you need to do to avoid burnout as a parent? What sort of tools do you use to sort of, help with the stresses that you are going through with dealing with all of this?
One of the first things that I've had to learn and accept is that perfection is an illusion.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, yes, it's total illusion. You're never going to get there, so stop chasing it.
And nobody else is perfect either, and that's the thing. See, for parents of high functioning autistics, everybody has the solution. Everybody knows how you should raise your child, and everybody has the unsolicited advice. If you just do this, or
do you get that a lot?
Yes.
Do you get that a lot? Oh,
I did used to. I don't anymore, because I've learned not to listen. So when people kind of start with, have you just, I turn around and I say, been there, done that. And we're quite happy with what we're doing at the moment. Thank you. So, but you do. And it tends to come from your loved ones, family, friends, because they don't quite understand the challenges. So, if you just do this, or one that parents tell me they hear a lot is from family, if I just have that child for just one day, I'll get them sorted out. And you kind of...
Oh my goodness. How insulting. Oh dear, oh dear. Well, you hear this a lot, that quite often it can come from the people that are closest to you, because maybe others wouldn't dare to even say it. No, sometimes when people are too close to you, that they feel that they might feel that they have some kind of right.
Yes.
But yes, I can imagine even going through all of that must be quite draining on you as a person.
It is, yes. And then of course you do get the family members that don't believe that your child is autistic, because they don't look autistic, they don't act autistic, they don't sound autistic, right? Autism doesn't look like that. And I've had parents ask me, how do you deal with family members who don't believe and they don't understand, so they don't believe that your child is autistic? And that's really challenging. But when that happens, I often say to parents, just, your child, know your child, so trust yourself.
There you go. Trust in yourself. And then with family members like that, just don't go as often and don't stay as long. There you go.
Very much. Yes.
Doesn't mean you have to cut them out. It just means and prepare yourself. Go emotionally supported.
Just understand that they don't understand.
Yeah.
As long as you remember. Remember,
like I said earlier, we don't know. We just don't know what we don't know.
But we don't know. And they have no idea what you do. So as long as you I do that very often. I probably not very pleasant to say, but I do that very often when people say, why don't you just do this, or why don't you do that, or it's so easy. And I often stand there and I look at them and I think, you have absolutely no idea. As long as I remember that you don't know what it actually takes to do what I do, then I feel okay, because I know what my struggles and my challenges are. You don't.
Yeah, sure.
So as long as I remember that within myself, no matter what you say, you
can stay calm.
Yes. You can't rattle me, because you won't walk a day in my shoes, kind of thing.
No, there you go. But I mean, do you worry about, how are they, would they be totally on their own? Is it something that you worry about? Do you, would they be fully independent? Or would you, well, I suppose you're always going to worry about your children, but
you always worry about your children, no matter.
You always will, but will they be okay? Are they quite okay on their own?
I would not.
Your older one.
Say that. I would say that they would always need to have a check-in.
Extra help.
Yeah, always, no matter how old.
So there's no time off for you. So how do you deal with that side? How do you sort of take a break?
I've learned to take a break with them.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's a time where you always being kind of the conduit, you're always being the one who interprets the world for them. But there's times when I just switch that off and I'm just mum.
Right.
I'm interpreting anything. I'm not explaining anything. And sometimes I just say that to them.
Right.
For the next X amount of time. That's it. I'm not interpreting.
That sounds like a skill in itself that you've got to learn. So, well, thank you for your time today, Moon. It's been enlightening for me. I have no experience with that as well. So I'm sure for any listeners that you're concerned, please get in touch.
Please.
So yes, thank you for your time. And to the listeners, I will be back next week with a coffee with Karen. Bye for now.
Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.